This video is sponsored by Trip.com. Hello and welcome to part 2 of my London, Tilbury and Southend mainline operators video. Today we're looking at the operator of the Essex Thameside franchise, c2c, from 2017 to the present day. But have they been any good since taking over operations from Network South East in May 1996, or should they perhaps be deemed as a failure? That's what I'll be discussing in the finale of this 2-part mini-series. Do make sure you check out part 1 now if you haven't already. If you enjoy, do like and subscribe, and do consider joining the channel on my Patreon membership. Thank you. First, let's recap on where c2c were as an operator from 2017. c2c operate all services out of London Fenchurch Street. They operate 3 principal routes: Fenchurch Street 2, Shoeburyness via Basildon, Southend Central via Ockenden, and Grays via Rainham, with 8 trains per hour departing Fenchurch Street. c2c would sometimes operate some services to Liverpool Street via Stratford during engineering works or other disruptive periods. As for their fleet, in 2017, c2c employed 72 4-car, recently refreshed, Class 357s, as well as 6 4-car Class 387s for all services, with the 387s entering service in December 2016 as a stopgap whilst waiting for a new fleet of trains which would enter service by 2022. The manufacturer of these was still unknown by the beginning of 2017. At the beginning of 2017, c2c was owned by National Express, who had taken over operations after purchasing Prism Rail in July 2000. However, this was all about to change. On the 11th of January, it was announced that National Express would be selling its last UK rail operator, which was c2c, to Trenitalia Rail, the partly state-owned Italian rail operator. National Express would sell c2c for around £70 million, making a slight net profit for the company, with National Express suggesting that it would move away from operating rail franchises due to more profitable lines of business in Europe and North America. Trenitalia suggested that they would continue to operate the UK's most reliable and punctual operator to the high standards that customers expected, confirming that they would continue with National Express's plans for a new fleet of trains, which would be announced later in the year, whilst also removing any National Express branding off of their trains. In April, c2c confirmed a new onboard entertainment system would be introduced. The company partnered with Go Media to launch Vista, which would see access to Sky News, Sky Sports, Now TV and Bloomberg on the move, with travel information also available through the launch of an onboard Wi-Fi. Elsewhere in 2017, in December, c2c confirmed that their new fleet of trains to replace the 387s and boost capacity would come in the form of Bombardier Adventurers, Class 720s, with 6 10-car trains being ordered, later revised to 12 5-car sets in 2021. The £100 million deal would increase c2c's capacity by around 20% with the new trains, originally designated Class 711s, hoping to be in service by May 2021. In January 2018, a new survey by Transport Focus found that just half of c2c passengers believed that their journey was good value for money, with this being above average for operators in London and the South East, but 2 percentile points lower than the previous survey. c2c were, however, one of just 3 operators to be praised for having quick and easy to use Wi-Fi. In September, c2c confirmed a £10 million contract with Sigma Spa for a master service agreement for the installation and subsequent maintenance of brand new ticket vending machines, which would allow passengers to directly top up smart cards or Oyster cards, with installations planned for 2019. These were, however, unreliable, and due to the fact that c2c had no e-ticketing system, led to large queues at ticket machines waiting for tickets to be printed, with some passengers complaining that they missed trains as a result. March 2019 saw c2c announce the launch of a new London to Southend service in less than 45 minutes at weekends. The service would run hourly from Fenchurch Street to Shoeburyness, reaching Southend in 45 minutes and Shoeburyness in 55. These 50 new train services would be on top of c2c's existing services, providing an overall increase in direct c2c trains between London and Southend by 25% on Saturdays and 50% on Sundays. c2c also confirmed the extension of its weekend Ockenden trains to and from Shoeburyness instead of Southend, with c2c Managing Director Julian Drury saying that the increase in services and journey time decreases would help residents get to London and Southend by public transport, being good news for the economy in Southend. In September, bad news came, however, when c2c confirmed that they would be removing all security guards at Southend East and Fort Bay stations at night, whilst increasing the number at Southend Central. Local passengers, including Sarah Jackson, believe security guards should remain at the other Southend stations, with crime around stations such as Southend East rising. Sarah suggested that, although living just 5 minutes away from Southend East, she would now have to take a taxi home due to a lack of security at stations. Michelle Walters, also from Southend, reiterated Sarah's views, saying that she would be unable to enjoy nights out in London due to the fear of getting home safely. Regardless of these concerns, c2c went ahead with the plans. Good news came elsewhere in September for c2c, however, when it was revealed that despite 1 in 3 rail services in Britain running late, c2c were once again the most reliable train operator in the country. Toughened standards for measuring punctuality were introduced by the DfT, resulting in just 64% of nationwide services running to schedule from 2017 to 18, with c2c recording the highest punctuality figure of 83.2%, much higher than whole trains' 36% and TP's 38%. On the 22nd of September, c2c confirmed plans to change their opening hours at ticket offices. c2c implied that where ticket offices had 12 tickets an hour or fewer sold, they would be closed during that period, with no offices closing altogether, and every ticket office remaining open during peak times. The proposed ticket office times would see numerous changes, with most stations seeing offices closed 30 to 45 minutes earlier, such as at Barking, whilst other smaller stations would see ticket offices closed during the weekends, such as Dagenham Dock, where the ticket office would no longer open on Saturdays and would remain closed on Sundays. The largest closure would be at Rainham, who would see their ticket office only open on weekdays from 6:15 to 9:45am, compared to the 10pm previous closure time, with the office closing completely on Saturday and Sunday, despite previously being open all day. The proposals were rejected by the RMT, who highlighted how some stations would receive over 10 hours of closures per day on weekdays, with c2c's passenger charter directly stating that every station must be staffed from the first to the last train, with, if these proposals going ahead, only 9 stations subsequently would be staffed from the first to the last train. The RMT also pointed towards a 16% increase in violent crime on the railway, with the staff needed to deter the criminal action. Regardless, c2c, after a consultation, went ahead with the proposed cuts to ticket offices, including at stations such as Grays, Barking, Southend, and the complete weekend closure at Rainham. These cuts have made it more difficult to buy tickets at c2c stations, but not to fear, for today's sponsor, Trip.com, has you sorted, with discounted flight and rail tickets. When I travel around the UK, Europe, or elsewhere in the world, I always look for the most affordable transport tickets, and Trip.com has helped me to do just that. They offer no booking fees, unlike many other ticketing websites, and use split ticketing to get the lowest prices possible, saving an average of 30% per rail fare. By searching the code weekly088 on the Trip.com homepage every Wednesday, Van Mania viewers can grab flights from just £9, and on Fridays, Van Mania viewers can also grab a rail card from just £9.90. If you miss out on these select weekly promotions, then don't fear. Trip.com is offering Van Mania viewers up to 20% off rail cards and up to 8% off flights and train tickets, as well as a plethora of other deals when you use the code #YTB9 in the promo codes tab. So, what are you waiting for? Do be sure to sign up to Trip.com, and don't forget to use the codes provided for discounts on your next trip, wherever in the world that may be. Thanks again to Trip.com for sponsoring this video. Now let's look at c2c during 2020. Going into 2020, the rise of the COVID-19 pandemic and sudden drop in passenger numbers saw c2c and Trenitalia agree on entering an emergency measures agreement with the Department for Transport in April 2020 to ensure that rail services would remain running during the pandemic. In September, this has changed to an emergency recovery measures agreement, which scrapped the old franchise contract, which would have seen c2c run services until 2025. In 2021, this Emergency Recovery Measures Act was replaced by a new rail contract until the 23rd of July 2023, which will see the end of private rail operations in the UK, with Trenitalia managing c2c on the direct behalf of the Department for Transport, a shadow nationalisation. Back in 2020 though, and c2c announced the retirement of long-standing Managing Director Julian Drury, who would be replaced by Ben Ackroyd. Julian was credited for his work at the company after a total of 40 years in the rail industry, helping to lift c2c to being one of the most reliable operators in the UK. Elsewhere in 2020, Network Rail released a study on the Essex Thames side, which was made before the pandemic. Although no longer being hugely relevant, the study did suggest the need for more 12-car trains, with every station, bar platform 3 at Grays and Shrewsbury Ness, being able to accommodate these longer trains. The study also showed how c2c passengers had been rising steadily since 1996, with passengers growing by more than 15 million from 2011 to 2019, above the national average. Footfall at Barking and West Ham had grown the most over the franchise, with there being a need for upgrading these stations, which were not fit for being a passenger interchange at their present state. The study also highlighted the potential new Beam Park station between Rainham and Dagenham Dock on the Tilbury Loop line, which would serve a new development of 3,000 homes, although were suspended during COVID. The new Barking Riverside station, as well as various upgrades on the DLR and Tube, would also see more passengers on c2c, even with COVID, with the need for longer trains being more prevalent. New developments at West Ham, Purfleet, Grays and Stamford-le Hope would all require stations to be upgraded or see longer trains, with a business case for new European train control systems to also be undertaken. COVID, sadly, hindered much of these proposals due to the decline in passenger numbers, but some of these, such as Beam Park Station, have been subsequently revived now that passenger numbers are finally returning to normal. In February 2022, c2c accidentally overcharged passengers by making an error on its booking system. Passengers travelling out of Fenchurch Street were being overcharged several pounds by accident, such as Fenchurch Street to West Ham tickets being £1 more than they should have been. Although not a huge increase in price, passengers were slightly annoyed due to c2c not offering automatic refunds, having to go through the lengthy process of contacting customer relations, with one passenger calling the fiasco unacceptable, highlighting how it was c2c's error, suggesting that we should not have to take time to make an application for a refund. Elsewhere, in May, the RMT voted for strike action on 13 train operators, including c2c. The strikes were the first of many in a nationwide rail strike by the RMT and ASLEF unions, lasting until the 2024 election of Labour. Also in May, c2c's timetable was changed to align with the opening of the London Overground extension to Barking Riverside, which would use some of the track which c2c ran services on. This meant that several small timing alterations would have to be made to ensure the overground services could run to schedule. In August 2022, c2c ran their last 387-3, which returned back to owners Porterbrook to be moved into service for Great Northern, with c2c no longer needing the extra capacity due to the decrease in passenger numbers, while Great Northern needed the trains to replace the ageing Class 365s. In February 2023, the Transport Secretary, Mark Harper, announced that c2c's contract would be extended from the 23rd of July 2023 to the 20th of July 2025. This came with more strikes by the RMT and ASLEF being announced, which led to severely impacted service days, with some days having no c2c services. In June 2023, c2c announced plans to go ticketless on a trial from Shoebury-Ness, which will see the launch of pay-as-you-go tickets using debit cards, as well as smart tickets loaded onto mobile devices. Yes, it took c2c until 2023 for mobile tickets to be allowed. Despite this, the rollout of e-tickets would be limited and would not be launched across the full network until 2024 due to lack of upgrades to the ticket barriers, which could not, at the time, scan tickets. Cyber attacks also hindered the rollout of pay-as-you-go. The announcement of digital ticketing came at a time when c2c suggested that it would be clamping down on fare evaders, with more revenue protection staff on its trains. In 2023, c2c caught 2,884 passengers travelling without a ticket, whilst 2,394 of them were charged a penalty fare. Ian Palmer, c2c's head of revenue protection, implied that fare evasion was costing the rail industry millions a year, saying that it was not fair for other passengers who have paid for their ticket. Elsewhere, in 2023, c2c confirmed that their new 5-car Class 720 Adventurers would be ready to enter service by the summer. On the 27th of September 2023, the first of these new trains entered service, on peak time diagrams out of Fenchurch Street. The new £100 million trains took 7 years to enter service, following delays due to COVID-19. With more seats in the trains, Wi-Fi and USB charging points at every seat, the trains would allow for more than 5,000 extra passengers to travel, with better accessibility areas and bike storage than the older Class 357s. c2c named one unit, 720-601, after the former managing director, Julian Drury, who spent 12 years with c2c, overseeing many of the improvements I've talked about over the last 2 episodes. In December 2023, c2c confirmed that they'd be adding evening peak times between 4 to 7 p.m. on weekdays due to a delay in contactless setup on the network. This would mean that passengers using an off-peak return would have to return before 4 or after 7 p.m. The changes would also see super off-peak tickets scrapped between zones 1 to 9, leading to some ticket prices rising rapidly, with the government suggesting that it would be cheaper to buy 2 single tickets than a return, depending on when you travel. Elsewhere in December, a judge suggested that c2c's dismissal of a ticket office staff member at Tilbury Town for a swiping motion near a 14-year-old's face was justified. Employment judge Laura Howden Evans concluded that c2c were acting reasonably by firing the ticket office worker, Mr. Johnson, back in August 2022. Mr. Johnson had been on CCTV attacking the boy by attempting to slap him in the face after playing with the card machine on the counter. Mr. Johnson suggested that he was subject to race discrimination by the security guards who reported him to c2c, whilst the tribunal suggested otherwise, highlighting how the guards would have responded the same way regardless of race. The start of 2024 finally saw the launch of e-tickets across the c2c network. The launch would finally enable passengers to purchase tickets from their mobile phone, only 17 years after they were first launched by Chiltern Railways. Passengers on c2c could now buy tickets on their mobile phones as QR codes, with all single and return tickets, advanced singles, railcard discounts, and e-tickets for other operators able to be purchased through the c2c app. 2024 did, however, come with some worse news, with c2c services once again affected by strikes, this time ASLEV, with strikes being staggered over several days as to maximise the effect that they would have on passengers to try and force the government to start negotiations. More strikes followed in April, but so did other news. The Class 357s reached 150 million service miles, with 2 million miles per train since entering service, equivalent to that of a journey between Mars and Earth. The trains clocked 7 million miles per year, equating to 175,000 trips between Shoeburyness and Fenchurch Street. c2c Operations Director Laura McEwen highlighted how the 357s were synonymous with c2c, and have helped them become the most reliable operator in the UK. As reward for their hard work, c2c confirmed, in May, that the 357s would be going through a major refurbishment. An £8.8 million contract with Alstom had been agreed, which would see all 74 357s go through rigorous maintenance works, including corrosion repairs, whilst also being outshopped with a new livery, which would see the trains receive a new pink front with pink doors and pink lines across the train, modernising the look of the 357s, which had been virtually unchanged in nearly 15 years. 357-207 was the first unit to receive the new look, with the project due to take around 24 months to complete. December 2024 saw the new Labour government, who had just resolved the strikes, announce new plans for rail renationalisation. These plans would see c2c, South Western Railway and Greater Anglia as the first three operators to be nationalised. South Western would be the first in May, then c2c on the 20th of July, and finally Greater Anglia in autumn. This would be the beginning of the end for the privatisation rail experiment, which would see c2c bow out of operations after 29 years on the rails, although they will most likely still be known as c2c for a little while yet. Elsewhere in December, several Class 357 carriages had been spray-painted and covered in graffiti, which passengers and c2c called unacceptable. c2c said that they would be looking at CCTV footage and working with the British Transport Police to find the culprits who, on one of the 357s, put a c2c as cool tag on the side of the train. Going into 2025, it was confirmed that c2c were yet again the UK's most reliable train operator, scoring 99.5 out of 100 on a reliability survey, with 11 minutes of delays per 100 kilometres travelled, the lowest of any operator, with the lowest cancellation rate of just 0.8%. The Elizabeth Line, Gatwick Express and Heathrow Express were all more punctual, but c2c topped the chart overall, with reliability also measured. In February 2025, c2c announced the launch of Pay As You Go, contactless across the entire c2c network, heavily delayed. c2c was one of 5 operators with new Pay As You Go contactless ticketing extensions, with Chiltern being the first back in July 2024. The launch for c2c was delayed after issues with the operations behind the system, but they were finally resolved and formally launched on the 3rd of February at Fenchurch Street. And with that, we get to the present day. c2c only has mere months before renationalisation, or may already be nationalised at the time you are watching this video. Regardless, we can look at whether or not they have been a success since 1996. Overall, I would strongly suggest that c2c have indeed been a success and not a failure. Since 1996, they have replaced all slam door inherited stock with state-of-the-art Class 357s, which, although had some hiccups at first, turned out to be solid and reliable units. New 8 and 12 car services, along with reconfigurations to some of the Class 357s into metro-style interiors, followed, with reliability and punctuality continuing to rise. They were, by 2017, a victim of their own success, due to the sharp rise in passenger numbers, and hence a rise in overcrowding and dissatisfaction. c2c overcame this overcrowding and dissatisfaction with the new Class 387s, which were subsequently replaced by the newer Class 720 Adventurers, which are now mostly all in service. New overhauls for the 357s are currently underway, and despite COVID stifling the private rail industry, c2c has continued to innovate through mobile and pay-as-you-go ticketing. Hence, overall, Prism, National Express and Trenitalia have all been a success in operating c2c, or LTS Rail as it were previously known, with the operator being one of the few examples of a success in UK rail privatisation. I do hope you've enjoyed this two-part mini-series on c2c. If you have, do make sure you like and subscribe, and consider joining my YouTube or Patreon membership. Special thanks to first class members Callum Martin Bell, Crispin McKee and John Williams, as well as my business zone members Andrew Byrne, Anthony Harris, Anthony James Moore, ARK, Clive Travel and Trains, Connor Grieg, Craig Mitchell 43, Dave CDF, Gordon Walker, JB NEL, J Teco, Lewis C21, Real TV, That Transport Girl and Train Teen. Get your name on this list from as little as £2.99 a month and help me to make my videos in return for special perks such as early access to videos. I do sincerely appreciate your support, so thank you a lot. Also, thanks to everyone that's let me use their footage for today's video. You can find their channels in the description or pinned comment below. Also, thanks once again to trip.com for sponsoring this video. Do check out the link in the description below to grab yourself savings on rail and airfares. Once again, thanks for watching. Check out my Blue Sky, Twitter and Discord server in the links below, and I hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.